I'm Dave from Modyfi, and in this installment of our Modifier mini-series, we'll explore the enchanting, powerful, and totally free Mosaic effect within Modyfi. We'll start by looking at the Mosaic Modifier on a really simple intro project, then move on to the main project and look at the Mosaic properties in more detail, and then look at some advanced examples. By the end of this video, you'll be able to make some stunning visuals with the Mosaic Modifier. Now let's look at the intro project. Okay, so as a super quick introduction, it's worth seeing how the Mosaic Modifier affects a very simple image. We have a beautiful eucalyptus plant here. So if I just select this and hit Command-Shift-K, type Mosaic, I can then hover to preview the Mosaic Modifier, click this to apply it. That's then placed the Mosaic Modifier above the image of the eucalyptus plant. And by default, we set the shape of the mosaic pattern to be hexagon. We can change any of these. I'll go through these in more detail when we're running through the main project. We then have colors and tile widths, all self-explanatory. Inset here. But what it is worth seeing, because it's not very clear on the example that we're going to use later, is how this Luma mode affects the shape and the patterns of the mosaic. So at the moment, Luma mode is set to off. We have a uniform set of hexagons here, all nicely tessellated. And if I set this to inset, you can see that the inset between the tiles has been altered based on the Luma being passed in to the Mosaic Modifier from the eucalyptus plant underneath. So here, set this to inset. Apply that. There we go. Turn that on and off. And again, there are a couple more Luma modes. We're going to use warp quite a lot in the upcoming example projects. So you can see what's happening here. Again, we're taking the Luma from the image of the eucalyptus plant underneath the Mosaic Modifier and warping the shape of the mosaic, of the hexagon in the Mosaic Modifier. And then last, rounding. Now this is a little bit harder to see, but you can see that the shape, the rounding of the circle or the hexagon has been altered by the Luma being passed in. So we have very nice circles here, and then where it's dark, we have more hexagon-looking tiles. So a super, super quick introduction to the Mosaic Modifier and how it affects a simple image. Let's now look at the main Mosaic Modifier project. Now, the Mosaic effect, along with many more, are all available on our website. Just head to www.modyfi.com, click on the Effects tab, scroll down to this Mosaic page. On this page, you'll see some examples, which we'll look at later in the video. And then just click on this or the Try It, It's Free button to jump in. That's where we're going to start. Let's go. Let's have a look at how this specific project is made up. We've got everything inside a group here. So if I collapse that, everything disappears. We've got several copies of the text mosaic with different effects on them. So the first copy is just being used to highlight the outline of the text there. So we've got the text mosaic with an outline on them. Check out the tutorial on outline. It's great. So I'm just going to hide that. We then got another copy of the mosaic text with a repeater on it. That's giving this extruded effect. If you can just see that white line coming and going there, and an outline on top of that as well. So let's just kill that one. Then we have some overarching modifiers just to provide some small effects. This one is quite small and sharpen, may not be even visible. Let's turn this one off. The edge modifier, then quite a dramatic effect here. If I turn this off, you'll see that it changes color completely. The edge modifier inverts and finds all the edges. We don't have a tutorial on the edge modifier yet, but I will put it on the list and we will get that to you ASAP. So I turn that one off. Then we really get into the heavy lifting section of the project. 2 mosaic modifiers. One responsible for these lovely triangles in the background, and one responsible for the rotating hexagons. Let's just turn those off for a moment. Then we have another copy of the mosaic text with a repeater on it. to give that extruded effect. We'll bring that back into play later. And then at the bottom, a soft rectangle in order to provide this grey background. So let's keep things super simple at the moment. Just turn off this text. So we've got a grey background and turn on this Mosaic modifier. So if I highlight this, I then get to see all of the Mosaic properties here on the right hand side. So, right, first of all, it's worth pointing out that we obviously have an animation running here. We have the rotation of this modifier running. If we click this, we can see here. So we have a sawtooth wave on a single cycle rotating the Mosaic modifier through 90 degrees. So when this repeats, it gives this continual rotation effect. And then we also have the center position being oscillated by this sine expo wave. So that's what's moving things up and down. Now, we don't have to turn off the animation in Modyfi in order to edit things. I can grab any of these properties and change them as it's playing, as proven here by the tile width. So we'll try and leave it playing as much as we can, but we may pause it just to make more sense of certain properties and things. Okay, cool. Let's close this and then talk about all of the properties of the Mosaic modifier. So, like every modifier and layer at the top, we have our opacity controls and our blend mode. I'm not going to go through those. They've been in every other video. It is worth noting that in this project, our blend mode is set to darker color though. So it isn't a normal blend mode used in this project. Below that, we have the pattern type, probably the most important property within the Mosaic modifier. And here we can choose what shape of tile we want to use in the Mosaic effect. So this is set to hexagon. If I drag and change any of them, I can change between square, triangle, hexagon, and brick. Okay. Below that, we have background color, which I can change here, which changes that sort of inset area between the tiles. And then I have a tint color, which will change the sort of tile color. I'm going to set that back to what it was. We mentioned the center position briefly earlier. That's having that animation applied to it. I can grab this and move this around if I wanted to move it, move its resting point. The animation would pick that back up. I'm going to put that back. I could also drag and change the numeric values if I wanted a specific position there. Below center position, we have tile width. So if I bring this down, the inset value, the gap between the tiles remains the same, but my tile changes size. Do this, can pop that back to where it was. And then rotation below that, the animations applied to that, as we mentioned, that's giving that beautiful linear rotation there. Again, I can alter this here. Okay. Below that, we have the inset width. So if we wanted very small gaps, very fine gaps there, we can do that there, and to very large gaps. Okay, softness will blur the edges of that. This isn't showing at the moment because of the blend mode. If I set this to normal and then set softness, you'll see that we get a blur applied to the edges of those shapes there. Okay, set that back. Rounding does what you might expect. It rounds the corners of whatever tile shape we have. So if I wanted sort of slightly rounded bricks, we actually use this exact effect at the end of this video for our title sequence. So maybe you can recognize that. Where are we? Rounding. Yep. So if I wanted normal brick shapes, round brick shapes, we can do that. Let's set that back to where we were. Hard hexagons. Now, Luma mode. Very, very cool property. We have several values within Modify off, inset, rounding, and warp. In this example, we're going to set it to warp. And what this means is that any luma, any brightness passed into the modifier from any entities, any layers, images below, will warp the shape of the tile. So if I turn on this text below here, with this set to warp, what's happening is that the luma values from the word mosaic and the combination of the repeater there as well are being passed into the modifier and then warping those hexagon shapes. So you'll see what's happening here right around the edge of the word mosaic here as it passes through. And we could probably make it a little clearer if I put a big rectangle, color it white. Now this is above the mosaic set to warp at the moment that's visible, so I'll put this below, and there you go. You see when the white, the very high luma values, hit the mosaic modifier set with hexagons above, and in warp mode, it's warping those edges. And when you layer up and combine mosaic modifiers with warp mode or luma mode warp turned on, you get these incredible combinations and warps and creates these lovely molten metal like effects. So that's exactly what's happening in this project. You can there are many other properties to play around with on that luma, like how much you want to boost it, whether you want to clip to alpha, but let's just see this effect, the luma mode warp, when we put the other mosaic on top. So what's happening here is that we have this triangular mosaic modifier set here that's set into warp mode. So what's actually happening is we are passing in, I'm going to remove this soft rectangle here, we're passing in the word mosaic with the repeater on it, passing that is warping the shape of the hexagons in this mosaic modifier, and then the combination of both are warping the triangles in the mosaic modifier above. So quite complex stuff that's going off here, but this combination of effects with luma mode warp is what is providing this beautiful visuals. And then if we turn back on the edge modifier, that obviously inverts and finds all the edges, we put the sharpen back in and the text, and that takes us right back to the example project there. So a very quick run through the mosaic modifier, but hopefully there's enough there to give you the basics to understand exactly what you can play with to make some really cool effects. Okay, let's now jump forward and look at some of the examples available on the website which uses the mosaic modifier. Okay, great. Let's look firstly at this A perspective project where the mosaic modifier is being warped by the luma behind it in order to give this sense of perspective changing. You can get to this project via the modifiers page on modify.com. Just hit this effects button at the top. It'll take you to this modifiers page. Just like we got into start with, click the mosaic project, and then down underneath here will be this project. You can remix this design. Okay, great. So here we are back in the project. We can see that the mosaic grid here is being warped to give this sense of perspective. So how is this happening? So here is the mosaic modifier in here. You can obviously see it's set to square. We could change that to triangle if we want to. Actually, it looks quite good as triangles. Now the magic is all happening in this luma mode warp. Just set this back to how it should be for this example. And this is happening because there's a 2-color gradient underneath this. So the top half of the background is black and the bottom half is white. And then when the mosaic modifier is in this luma mode warp, it changes and warps the size of the mosaic tiles based on that gradient. So I can, if I moved this gradient, move the points of the gradient as it's happening, you can see these crazy effects. And again, that's because this gradient is now got a larger transition period, white on one side, black on the other. You can see that's happening there. So again, if we wanted to create some wild, it actually looks really good set. If I set the mosaic modifier to brick, pretty cool. Let's just tweak this gradient here. So you can understand, you can see this principle here. Bring this up so it makes it look like the A is actually sat on that surface. So again, mosaic modifier, they're used in warp mode with a 2-color gradient underneath it to produce this perspective A effect. Okay, let's now look at a different project. Next up, we've got this quite advanced but very, very cool effect in this chromium project. Now, what's happening here is we have some very basic images and pen strokes underneath everything that have got animations applied to them that then are passed into a mosaic modifier again in warp mode. There's a brick pattern on that mosaic modifier, and then that in turn is passed into a shrink wrap modifier, which providing this effect. Now there are lots of animations and things in this project, so I'll try to detail as much of that as I can. But let's just step back through the project and understand what's happening here at a basis. So if I just turn off the shrink wrap, we can see the colored mosaic effect there in brick mode again. So I can change these shapes. These are being heavily animated, so they might not resemble their original shapes. Again, lots of animations on the center position, tile height, tile offset, all the way through here. But let's turn off that. We then start to see what's happening a little bit more underneath here, and let's step back through here. We've got a pen stroke here that we can get rid of, another pen stroke that's being animated, another pen stroke, and then there's one more pen stroke here. Then we expose these bitmaps underneath. So I think there's 2 here in total. Turn off a blur here that's being applied. And then we've got 2 of these layers are invisible, but we've got an image here that is blended with the image below, which is a gradient blurry background. So these start the basis here, very simple stock images, animated, combined. Let's bring them back in, bring that blur back. Okay, so all of these combine to create this very abstract animated scene underneath it. Then when we put the mosaic on, we're starting to get those brick shapes appear. And then when we put the shrink wrap on top, those anywhere where there's shapes and Luma will be wrapped in a material. Or please do check out the shrink wrap tutorial as well. So mosaic and shrink wrap, a great combination to create effects like this. Okay, that was a very quick run through a fairly advanced project. So if you do have any questions, any comments, you want to know more detail, please just place a comment below the video. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. You can also contact us anytime on Discord. I'll make sure there's a link in there. Let us know what you want to see next. Hope you're still enjoying the videos. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.